All right, we're live. And again, I apologize. I am running late. We were at a ward party and I misjudged the clock a little bit and I'm here. So I sent the link out to your email. Also, it's in the community. If we get beyond that 10-person maximum in this live video, go to the YouTube, the channel, or the link to my YouTube channel, and you can watch the video from there. So you can't join the video as well that way, but you can definitely watch it live still. So there's two ways to go on that so we can get more people involved. Okay. So welcome everybody. How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Good. Well, I appreciate everybody's work. I know you guys are meeting and discussing and having fun already, so that's fun. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a chat here too. All right, so I had a thought. I wanted to share a thought, and then we'll start with the prayer if that's all right. And Michelle's under the weather. Oh no, no bueno. We'll get feeling better. We're right at the beginning of the semester, so. This thought, it's a quick scripture from section 19 of the Doctrine and Covenants. This is, and I thought it applied to what we're doing. We're learning. Section 19, verse 23 says, "Learn of me and listen to my words. Walk in the meekness of my spirit, and you shall have peace in me." So very often I'll think of that, just that first little phrase, "learn of me." And I think we can learn of him in many settings. Hopefully we can learn more about him through this class and all the classes that you're taking this semester. As we learn of him, we learn his words. As we listen to his words, we have, and he is the source of peace. So I know that to be true. Who would like to give a prayer? If not, I can give it to. It's up to you guys.
I can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be gathered together as students from BYU Idaho. We're grateful for the technology that makes this possible, and we're grateful to have this opportunity to learn and to grow. Please bless us that we might fill of thy spirit, despite being across the country and in different locations, that we might learn what thou would have us learn, and that we might be able to achieve what thou would have us achieve this night, that we might learn more about teamwork and leadership and be able to take that into our families, our callings, and our schoolwork. We are grateful for thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, for his sacrifice for us and for the opportunity that we have to return and live with thee. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Perfect. It's fun to be able to gather over this technology. Every time we do it, it's a lot of fun. We're in different locations, but thank you for the prayer. I know we can feel the Spirit through the computer into our own homes. So it's really a good process. Well, first, just start out, I'd just like to open it up usually to see if there's any questions out there that we can clarify, and then we'll jump into some material, and then I also ask for questions at the end if you think of any. So anybody have any questions, concerns, anything like that?
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, that's all right. If you think of something, I'll leave a minute at the end as well. So,
where should we be in the doohickey assignment?
So that's one thing I wanted to mention. So the doohickey assignment, it's, as you've noticed, it's kind of an ongoing assignment. But to clarify how that works, so we have doohickey papers that you'll turn in on week 5, week 8, week 11, and week 14. So you do turn in a paper each of those weeks. You have the problem, you do the problems and the recommendations. So each paper, though, is going to be a little bit different. Each paper will focus on the areas that we focused on in the previous weeks. So you can start working on that as a group now. This first paper on week 5 obviously will cover what we've talked about. So leadership, teamwork, employment laws, and harassment and diversity. So that kind of gives you an idea of where to pull your line of thought from. And then in week 8, it'll cover more of the areas that we've covered in weeks 6 through 8. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So yeah, as far as where you should be, just kind of being prepared for week 5, and it's up to you as a group how you work that paper. You know, you can collaborate how you want to. So you can have one person that kind of compiles. You can use email. I tend to favor Google Docs. If you've ever used Google Docs, that means you can all work on the same document together, whatever you prefer. So whatever works best for your crew.
Brother Stanley, I do have a question about that. At the very beginning of that doohickeys, there was a form that we were supposed to fill out, but I can't seem to find that.
Yeah, so I meant to get a message out to everybody, and I still will. That is a form that, to my understanding, was part of a few semesters ago. It's to help you collaborate with your group. We've kind of replaced that. We were using the Google Hangouts, and you're communicating with your group, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
So just let that slide through. No worries to locate that or do anything on it. Does that work?
Yep, that works.
Okay. Sorry for the confusion on that. I didn't see that ahead of time to get the word out. So
Within a doohickeys group, you know, one classmate prefers to be sort of a leader of sorting it out. Another classmate prefers to do the communication aspects of it. I think it says in the instructions that you're meant to rotate, have some sort of rotation. How balanced does this rotation need to be?
it's up to you guys. Mainly the rotation is for your weekly discussion on the course content, to rotate that responsibility, because there's a section in there for discussion leader questions and things that you follow on that. So that does rotate. As far as doohickeys goes, you can, whatever dynamic you want on that. I don't have a preference. You know, if there's somebody that wants to take more of a lead on that, and then others that want to be more contributors, that's fine too. But with the group leader assignments, you do want to rotate that. Everybody has to do that twice through the semester. And then once everybody's done that twice, if there's extra weeks, you know, whoever wants to do it from there, that's fine. So, but however you want to rotate that, that's fine with me. So, good question. Well, let's jump into the content. Time is a premium here, so I wanted to jump in. I know you guys were meeting as groups. I've listened to a few of your discussions here and there, and I just want to say great work. It's kind of a fun experience to hear from different groups, to hear from different parts of the class, bringing up different angles, points of view, different problems, issues that are all unique to what I've maybe thought of or other groups have thought of. So it's a lot of fun. Michelle has a comment here. It says, mention that if we need to do the discussion, we do not need to turn in the discussion leader assignment. Yes, that's correct. So if you end up leading a third time, you don't have to do a discussion leader assignment. Save you some work on that. So just have to do it twice and then you're good. So thanks, Michelle. All right, so what did you think of the Army crew case? What was
I was a little confused.
You were confused? Okay. What can we clarify for you?
Well, I mean, I had to read it 2 or 3 times and take the quiz and then go back over it again to figure out, you know, who's on first and who's on third.
Sounds like you read like I do. Like, oh, I'll have to read this again.
Yeah.
Feeling better about it now?
Yeah. I think I got it now.
All
Wish
right.
I'd have known that before I had taken the quiz, but it's all right.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Well, no, we appreciate that. You know, these cases sometimes you have to review them. And so in the case prep assignment from last week, you know, it recommends that you do kind of a quick read through, and then you read through it again to look for the problems, and then that'll allow you to kind of think through it as far as a what would I do, you know, point of view. So it's a process. So, but they're a lot of fun. There's a lot packaged into them. Okay, so what, you know, in a quick summary, what are the problems we're facing with Army Crew? So of course we're in the perspective of Coach P. I don't know how to say his last name, Coach P. What is he facing?
Well, first he's facing a completely ununified varsity team.
Yeah, good word, ununified, getting beat up by the JV team.
Yeah. I mean, they're losing and they're not unified.
Yes. Yeah, multiple problems. Good.
I think that he's facing each member is focusing on their individual efforts rather than team efforts.
Hmm.
So he's
Yeah. So that didn't turn
having a
out.
problem on how to get that pulled together.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Good insight there. Everybody's on their own. And I don't know, I'm not sure if reading about this rowing, I'm not sure if there's a more team-involved sport than rowing. It's very, very particular, very, what's the word? You make a wrong, unforgiving, yeah, that's good. Yeah, you make a wrong move and you're toast. Good. Well, yeah, definitely a good setup. I mean, the Coach P is frustrated. You know, his varsity team that he's handpicked is getting beat out by a junior varsity team, which is the bottom 8 rowers. Whereas as far as skill level is getting beat out. So we'll just kind of go from there. You know, we've kind of identified the overall problem. So first, what is, in your insight, what has Coach P done well? Case tells us. Michelle, how do you thought?
What is he?
Oh, I wanted to talk about what Coach P has done well.
I think he gathered enough data, individual data.
Yeah, very much so. How did you do that?
I can't remember it had to do with the strengths test, and I don't know, there was several different tests that he wound up doing.
Yeah, he did. And I can't remember the reference, but there was a bunch of coaches that got together on the Olympic Committee and identified 200 key successful behaviors. They narrowed it down to, was it four areas of the elements of success. So if you're on page 2, it's under the elements of success. I think that highlights some of those. Page 4.
Yeah.
Good. Yes.
I feel like you did a good job physically preparing them for what they needed to do. So, you know, their workouts and that kind of thing, but he was lacking in any kind of team building, anything outside of strictly just straight rowing and strength training type of stuff. And he was missing out on letting the guys get to know each other kind of outside of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I wonder what we can learn from that. I mean, so he's got these physically fit rowers. He's got all the right elements of success, per se, on the boat. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there for him. So that's what we'll discuss. Michelle had some thoughts here too. She said, I know you recognized in retrospect that there were issues, but I'm not sure if it was so easily identified up front. Yeah. He had plenty of experience in putting together teams and applied what he knew. When problems came up, he did try several different things to identify the issue. Yeah, so he's not lacking in effort, is he? So it would be a frustrating situation.
But it's true, he was kind of focused on the physical. Like that whole workout, the other coach, that Satan guy, that sounds like if they're already the strongest rowers, that seems kind of counterproductive to exhaust them with a workout brought to you by Satan.
Yeah, doesn't sound fun at all.
I think there was a lack of mental training, a lot of physical training, but no mental training.
Right, and so there's a balance. Makes a distinction at that bottom of that paragraph under the elements. It makes a distinction between 3 levels of coaches, which I thought was interesting. If you see that, it says one pattern was that novice and intermediate coaches tended to rate a multitude of variables as highly important, whereas master coaches focused on a smaller set of variables ranging from 11 to 20. It says novice coaches focused on technique, intermediate coaches concentrated on conditioning, and master coaches tended to spotlight psychological variables as the most important ingredients of a successful crew. So, you know, and I'm sure it's easy to fall in and out of those different categories, but interesting distinctions. So there's technique, there's conditioning, and there's the psychological variables. Could we say he's missing out on some of those psychological variables?
Yep.
I think some of it comes from the players' attitudes, though, because he did try some of that team building stuff, and the JV responded, but the varsity thought it was too touchy-feely. So it's not all on him. He tried, but they didn't love it.
It's true. So difficult situation. So what would you guys do?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was a ropes course. I remember doing one, and it really built trust. And I think that's one of the things that they needed to do was trust each other. I think that was part of the problem that they had.
Definitely. Lack of trust. That's a big one.
My group today,
Yeah, I was just gonna, oh, sorry.
I say my group today thought they should all do the faith fall, and I thought I can't be a member of a rowing team because I can't do faith fall to save my life. So that was their suggestion.
No, that's good. I kind of joke about that at work in my day job, and you know, we'll have struggles with our leadership team. I've got 24 supervisors that are out on the floor, and you know, it'll get a little frustrating at times. So I tell the site director, we just need to do a big trust fall. So, yeah, they're scary, but it takes trust, right?
I think
Good.
the coach needed to lead by example in showing that trust, and having open communication with them. You know, try to get more personal, and get them to openly talk personally of personal things, of family, so that they get to know each other better than just he's on the rowing team with me. That there's a person behind that rower.
Good point. So let's jump into that, kind of the communication opportunities. So how does he get into that situation? How do you so obviously we're dealing with egos, an 8-man set of egos. How can the coach crack into that? Anybody been in that situation? Egos getting in the way. You have a team that's divided. How do you communicate to them?
I don't know that their team was really divided, but my sons, when my oldest was a senior and my second son was a sophomore, they played for a basketball coach that was a perfect example of we're going to we're going to run teams into the ground and we're going to be more physically fit than anybody else. But at the same time, we are brothers and we trust each other. And I mean, it was just preached to them from the get-go, and he was very much a part of their lives. I mean, he's still, my second son will still see him when he's in town, and we run into him and we're still great family friends, everything. He was just so involved with it. And so that example to the boys of him caring about them so much and teaching them to care about each other so much. They lost 9 games that season, and they won the state championship by 1 point. And it was crazy because by the end of the season, they were playing so well together. They trusted each other. They worked hard together. And not one of them went on to play college basketball. They didn't have any elite, fantastic, well, I shouldn't say not one of them. My son does, but he's the only one out of that group. But they, we got to the state tournament, and other people would look at their team and be like, "Oh, who are they? They're going to get killed. They didn't have any height. They didn't have any, anybody but they all loved each other, and they all played their hearts out for each other, and they won."
That's a great example. So they lost 9 games and still won the championship, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
They beat a team that was undefeated all season by 1 point in the championship game. And so they came together, right at the right time. But their coach, that was a big deal to him, is that you trust each other and you have to play together as a team, and you have to be willing to make the extra pass and let somebody else make the shot if they're more open than you are, and that kind of thing. And he did a good job coaching them.
Wow, that's excellent. So the example there, anything else that maybe was part of that message that helped that team come together? Were a lot of the losses up in the front of the season, or was it throughout the season?
Yeah, there was at the start of the season there were more than at the end. I think there were 1 or 2 at the end that came. But as the season went on, they just all came together, week by week, and by that tournament, they won 1 other game of that tournament by 1 point too.
Wow.
It was.
I think one of the things that I learned on this is their attitude versus the JV attitude. Their attitude every time they began their race, it was their chant. They had nothing to lose. So they went in there with a good attitude that, you know what, we're going to have fun, we're going to work hard, we're going to go together. Whereas the varsity team wasn't there. I don't even remember what their chant was, but it wasn't a team effort.
Yeah, it was something different every week, right? Or every time they did a chant, they'd chant something different.
Right. They were never together. They were never the same thing. It was, go get them, let's fight, whatever. But the varsity team was always there, the same thing, that they had nothing to lose. So they were going to go out there and give their best.
And that's the other thing that my son's coach did that whole season was that, hey, look, you guys, you have nothing to lose. Enjoy this journey, because you're never going to be here again, and you're never going to get this chance again. So have fun and enjoy it while you're going along. And that's what they did, and it works.
I had a niece who was in a band of a very, very small town, and they came up to big Dallas area over here, and they had a big band competition. And I could hear people, we went to go and watch, and they were doing all of their little routines and stuff. One of the schools was very, very huge, so big, and I am not kidding, they covered the whole field. That's how many students they had. And, it was impressive that they could get that many students to do the same thing and make all the formations. But it wasn't them that won the competition. This little town that came in that nobody knew who they were, came in with a good attitude. We may be small, but we're big in our hearts. And they went out there and did their very best and wound up coming, I think they came in first in showmanship and third overall. So, you know, I think it's a lot to do with your attitude and knowing that you're there for, like you said, the journey.
That's great. So, you know, any team can accomplish what they want to, depending on the attitude. And you think about the chants or the mission statements or whatever you call them. What does that do for a team when you have that consistent message? What is the meaning behind that?
I think it sets the mood and the attitude.
It does. And I think of attitude in a team setting as, you know, that collective attitude. It defines purpose. Defines your purpose as a team, and creates unity. So, you know, there's a lot of actually new writing out there about team building to get to a point where you identify purpose. Okay, so when we're talking about motivation and management and teamwork, helping individuals define their purpose and then connecting the purpose of the team to that individual is what makes things really go. Let's see, Michelle. Let's see, the coach placed 2 of the strongest on the JV belt for technique and attitude issues. They ended up being part of the unified team. That's true. So Michelle asked a question here. Why do you think they adjusted so well to the JV team?
I think one reason is just what you were saying, is they understood their purpose. Like, they really truly had nothing to lose. They already lost a spot on the varsity boat, so they really truly had everything to gain. And so why not unify with the team and, you know, show that you could have earned your spot on the varsity boat?
I think it also showed that they were accepted for who they were as well.
Accepted, recognized. Yep, recognized is a big deal. Yeah. Now that's a good question. Because we still have egos that we're dealing with. So why did that work for some to just let them gel in?
I was thinking back to the email system that the coach had set up. So on the JV team, they were all emailing positive messages or like feedback that was helpful for the whole team. And the varsity team, they weren't really doing that, but they were complaining to the coach. And then where were those complaints going? Only to the coach. They had nowhere to get that out. The coach wasn't like getting the people that were complaining together. He was just taking like all of that internal negativity and not doing anything additional with it. And that seems like a really unproductive way to coach.
He's inside the big group.
Yeah, I thought so too. You know, email might be a communication channel, but there's only one receiver. I would think it had to do with the JV team, who had a clear leader, where the varsity team had not an identifiable leader. Yeah, so there was no leadership. Nobody was driving it, being that unifier. I heard a phrase this week that I thought was interesting, kind of fits in with the email idea. It actually came from my dad. So he works at a hospital, and the CEO is his message lately has been make sure the mail gets to the right mailbox. So he's actually addressing this type of issues, complaints and gossip. Make sure the mail gets to the right mailbox. So the funny thing about complaints, and we never get complaints, do we? The funny thing about complaints is usually there's not a solution tied to it, or if the person's complaining about something else, not something else. If they're complaining about somebody else, they're not talking to that person. They're talking to a third party. So the message is, make sure the mail is getting to the right mailbox. If you've got an issue, put it in the right mailbox. Talk to the right person. Right? So I wonder how many of these complaints, going back to the coach's email, I wonder how many of those complaints had to do with other team members versus, hey, I'm complaining about you, coach. Does that make sense? Does that ever happen?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that was shared with me this week. So make sure the mail gets to the right mailbox. So if I got an issue with somebody or I've got a problem to solve, if I go complain to my buddy about it, that's great, but it doesn't change the problem.
I
So,
think we have to be careful that we're not getting all worked up about something that we have no control over. We tend to point fingers a lot when in reality, our group today talked about this. We talked a lot about how humility plays such an important part in getting along with a team and realizing, it's the opposite of having a big old ego, is that you just realize that you're doing your best and so is everyone else, and everyone is going to fudge up here and there and mess up here and there, and it does no good to get all upset about something that in reality, you can't do a whole lot about, and it's not really going to change anything. And you think about, what is your purpose of bringing this up to someone? Is it really, I think you really have to think about if it's that big of a deal to warrant it being brought up. Otherwise, you need to let go of it and forget about it and not worry about it.
it's great advice.
You want it to be constructive, not destructive.
Yes. And in workplace, in any setting, in our homes, at church, any group we're part of, this can happen. And yeah, it's great advice. As an HR manager, that's my message a lot is, okay, so, if there's an interpersonal conflict I'm a part of or trying to coach somebody through, that's one of my messages is, okay, what are you in control of in this situation? Right? You can't control how somebody responded to you, or you can't control how somebody interpreted your message. So what can you control? And it's always point back to them. You're in control of you, right? What can I do? So more times than not, it seems like I'm sharing that message, and I try to live that message too. There's a great book out there called Leadership and Self-Deception. Anybody read that book?
Mhm.
It's from the Arbinger Institute. It's a quick read, 120 pages, but it's actually a fictional story. But the message is, hey, it's really easy to say the problem is out here. The problem is you. When in reality, the problem is me. And we're picking on other people for their weakness or their folly. Usually we have that same weakness or that same fault that we're dealing with. So if you want some more to read, not that you don't have enough to read in school right now, it's a great book. All right, Michelle's read it. Yeah, it's a good book, and they actually wrote another book called The Anatomy of Peace, which is a similar message, and then they just came out with a new book called Looking Outward. Something. I messed up that title, but it's new. It's actually to help organizations in that process. So if you're a nerd for this stuff like I am, those are 3 good books. But no, that idea of, hey, maybe the problem is me before others, it's so helpful. It's helpful in all my relationships. It's helpful in my job. It's helpful at church. It's helpful, with friends and family, whatever. So I think that's a powerful idea. Humility, is what it comes down to, being able to look in the mirror. So we've got these rowers that probably need to do that too. So I'm sure some of you have discussed as a group and some of you haven't yet. The discussion leaders got to find out how this was actually handled. Okay, and I think there's some good discussion to be had there. So do all of you know the outcome of the case? It's kind of exciting, kind of interesting. Do we want to talk about it? Spill the beans for Maria?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Okay. I just think it's interesting. So first of all, I mean, Maria, since you don't know the result, you've talked a little bit about what you do, about opening the communication channels, getting that trust through building those relationships. What would you do if you were Coach P? You know, with that in mind, anything else you would do?
Well, I thought of a few things. I guess with the communication, get the team to understand what their common goal is and how they're going to get it. Involve them in it, not just tell them how it's done, but make them own up to it. You know.
Oh, she lived there. You mean in Hawaii?
Maybe bring in some learning experiences that we can share with them. Again, you know, try to come up with some way of getting them to share the load. Have maybe a support network.
I like it, Maria. So, yeah. So build relationships, right?
Yeah, find ways of building those relationships.
And build the leadership within the group.
Right, even if it's like a social event or something away that they can build those relationships together and not just be focusing on just one thing. Look at the whole picture.
Excellent. Yep, and it's that's the end goal, and that's the challenge, is how do you actually do that? Because Coach P is a little bit in the short term, like, hey, we've got to hurry up and figure this out so we can win. So what did he do? Everybody who knows, what did he do?
A giant wrestling match.
Do you believe that, Maria?
A giant wrestling match, okay.
We had them pair up and wrestle with each other, and then pair up with somebody else and wrestle with each other. And by the third round, they were calling each other out and wrestling with each other, and like taking their frustrations out. Which, you know, I have all boys in my house that you can hear in the background. That's like one way to do it, but it kind of makes me laugh when I think about in a company or like in church leadership, like, let's all wrestle to get along.
Yeah. Yeah, so it definitely worked for his audience. They realized, hey, everybody is just as strong or stronger than me. And then they ended up saying, hey, coach, this is dumb. Can we go right back out on the boats? Let's go. So essentially, I think that's a good metaphor for what we want to try to accomplish, maybe in an office setting where we can't have a wrestling match. So any other alternatives that accomplishes the same purpose?
I don't know. I had a friend who, when her daughters would get angry with each other, she said, you can be angry, but you have to sing it to each other. So if you're going to yell at somebody, you have to do it in a singing voice.
That would be fun.
Then they weren't so mad with each other anymore because they started laughing.
That's funny. I'm going to remember that one. Michelle clarified something for me. She said they realized no person was stronger than another. So this is West Point. They're military trained. They're strong. They have the same, combat training. And they said, oh, yeah, we're all matched up, so let's go work together. Yep, thank you.
That's what surprised me the most about this case was, like, we're talking about West Point, like, they go into battle, they have each other's backs everywhere but their rowing team. Like, that's the part that surprised me the most. So it was cool that they realized they were the same strength as each other.
Yes, very interesting, a disciplined group. They go out, and do all this type of work, and army training combat, but they can't row a boat together. So it happens, though. in the workplace. I have issues with people, and as an HR manager, and it's like, really, is this really an issue? It's like, well, it is. And basically your goal is to try to help them house and be adults again. So not to talk down on people, but sometimes it feels that way. Yeah, and it took the coach by surprise. All I had to do was a wrestling match. So I mean, that was the outcome. John wrote referee. What do you mean, John? I don't know if you can hear me or not. Oh, sometimes you have to be the referee. Yeah? Yep. So I'm sure we've all been in situations where we had to kind of be that referee or be in that setting. One situation comes to mind where I literally was the referee. We had a conflict between two employees, a security guard and a manager. One was spreading rumors about the other. And I was in the middle of all of it, hearing both sides. And finally, you know what I did? I got them in my office, shut the door, and let them work it out. And there was yelling involved. They were standing up and got upset. And then I said, okay, hold on. There's tension here. So I would blow the whistle, so to speak. And then eventually they worked through it. It wasn't a wrestling match, but it very much could have been. Yeah, Michelle added, it confused the coach. So the result of this wrestling match confused the coach. He had obviously been doing this for a while. Maybe he took it for granted that they were a team. We all have to be able to take a step back once in a while, right? So. Oh, sorry, Michelle. Not the wrestling match. I'll let her respond again here. Oh, the problem itself. Okay, yeah, so he's facing the frustrations and took for granted that they are a team and need to be able to work it out and use their strengths together. Agreed. So there's a lot packaged into these cases. I think, you know, so we're going to discuss and hit on a few of these things. I know as your groups, you're going to discuss and have different ideas as well. It's fun on this one because we know the result. But I think there's a lot that can be learned. So let's go around a little bit here and just, what was a big highlight that you pulled out from this case? Big takeaway.
I think it's that what I take out of this is that obviously this coach has been doing it for years, and sometimes we become complacent in what we're doing. We may be very good at it, but when it involves people, things are always different. You have different personalities and different likes and dislikes, and we have to take that into consideration all the time, and not be complacent with that and say, well, it worked for me last year, it should work for me this year, and be a little more on the human side when it comes to that.
I like it. So don't get complacent. Good advice.
One of the things that I thought of, I was trying to think about how this related to possibly human resources in an office setting or within a family and stuff. And, you know, let's face it, there's going to be people that we don't get along with. And there's going to be, you know, sometimes when we serve in callings that with people that we don't necessarily get along with, there's going to be people in a job setting that are in a group that they don't necessarily all get along. And how would somebody need to go about trying to make that better? You know, sometimes you have to make the hard decisions. The coach was, one of his thoughts was, let's let the JV team, be the main rowers then, and he was just gonna say too bad to the varsity team and give the JV guys a chance. And sometimes if you are in charge or you're a manager or you're in a situation, you have to sometimes make those hard decisions.
Yeah, thank you. You do. The coach had different options, and he could have done that. He could have swapped them out, but chose not to. And you're right, we don't always get along with everybody, right?
But we need to make sure and always look at ourselves and say, what can I do to make this situation better? Not, and just do our part in getting along with those around us.
Exactly. I love that. Thanks for bringing that up, this discussion. It's great.
So one of the takeaways for me was where it talks about the best response was to trust whoever made the error would correct their next stroke. So I was looking at this from a parent standpoint because that's my experience. And as a parent, that is not my natural response, and that is not what I would feel is the best response, right? Like, I'm not necessarily going to trust them to correct their error without really any input from me, which is basically what those rowers had to do. And so it kind of forced me to take a step back and realize I need to let my kids learn from their mistakes. Obviously, as a parent, there's some mistakes we try not to let them learn from, or we try to push them a little bit. But I mean, on this team, that was literally what they had to do, because as soon as somebody overcompensated for somebody else, it slowed them all down. And so we can't hinder our family or our team's progress by going back and correcting all the mistakes ourselves.
Perfect. I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of my highlights too in my notes. Yeah. How easy is that? Say somebody messed up. Say who messed up? Yeah. But we've got to keep our form. We've got to keep doing our part and not worry about the other guy.
You just have to work your hardest to do whatever you need to have accomplished.
That's good. Yeah. Work your hardest and not because as soon as you look away and worry about somebody else, you're losing energy, right? Not easy, right?
Correct.
Thanks, Courtney. We've got some great comments here. Joyce, unity is a key to the success of any team. Yes, I agree. Unity equals shared core goals. I like that. That goes back to that purpose idea. John, a team is only as good as its parts. It's everyone's job to learn to work together. The more we can get our team becoming one unit, we'll be good. John said, I think at times we need to let others try to accomplish a task, and if they fall, guide them so that they can perform up to expectations.
When you work as a team,
yep,
you become one.
Yes, you should, and that's the goal. Excellent. And Michelle, the tendency to enter into a downward or upward spiral based on small events was interesting. Finding the core issue is important. Agreed. Our response is huge, right? I mean, we can spiral downward or we can pull upward. It's up to us. Easy to say, harder to do, isn't it? Large group, very able and committed people. In real life, we don't always have that. Real life struggle is having patience and ability to draw out each member's best efforts.
Good point.
Excellent, Joyce. Thanks. Yes, I actually saw a post today. It was on LinkedIn about a recruiting post, and it says, we hired them for their strengths. Why are we focusing on their weakness? If you want more good read, there's a lot of reading out there about strength-based leadership. They've proven that if you lead others through their strengths, that your performance will skyrocket compared to trying to fix what they're weak at. We want people to grow and get better, but we actually perform through the strengths that people have. So that's great. Is that everybody? Any other thoughts out there? I'll share mine. I think that choice that the coach made is an interesting one. So he could have gotten fed up, switched out the teams, but he didn't. He stuck with it. So the thought I have, and I think some of you guys mentioned this, is there's always opportunity. So it's never too late for a team to come together. You know, there's going to be consequences. You might have some losses. You might have some difficulties, but it's never too late. And that depends on the situation. That depends on a lot. But people, we can always grow and get into that Michelle mentioned. So, final thought is think about how the Lord feels about building a team and building unity. What did he say in the Doctrine and Covenants? If ye are not one, ye are not mine. Okay, so from a spiritual standpoint, from a church standpoint, the Lord expects us to be one. He expects us to figure it out and work together and make it work. And you know, it's a testimony that through we can do that. We can unite. He invites us to pray. He invites us to work. And if we're praying and working, acting in faith, things happen. Miracles happen. So interesting thought. And that's what I love about this course is there's a lot of the connections that we get to make. Because, you know, honestly, our Heavenly Father, He's directing the affairs of all of us as His children, and He wants us to work it out because He has a plan. But we get to be the hands to make it happen. So He's very patient, isn't He? But that's true. You know, I think of the scripture that says He's able to do His own work, but He lets us do it so we can become who we need to become. So that's my testimony. You know, we're talking about teamwork as far as trying to build Zion and do the work that the Lord wants us to do. These principles can really help us keep that in mind. So, thanks for all your work and all your great comments. We'll close there. Any questions come to mind at this point?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, if anything does, just shoot me an email or we'll get you taken care of. So
Thank you.
thank you all. You're welcome. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks.